Chapter 1. The Boy Who Wasn't on Any Record. The snow had grown quieter lately, as if the world was holding its breath. It had been 3 days since I heard Eleanor's voice on that old cassette. 3 days since the final gunshot echoed in my ears, and a boy's cry followed in its wake. I hadn't slept since. Jamie Whitestone, a name carved out of silence, wrapped in wealth, and buried in administrative shadows. A boy who didn't exist on any official record, yet somehow had a scholarship, a guardian, and a legal identity that had never passed through any court. He was 17, or so they said. I started at the top. St. Bellamy's Academy, an elite school on the edge of the city where money could buy discretion and secrets were dressed in uniforms and winter coats. When I walked in, I was met with polished oak floors, marbled hallways, and the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. The receptionist blinked when I asked for Jamie. "I'm sorry," she said, too quickly. "No student by that name." "Try again," I said, showing her my credentials and a copy of Arthur Whitmore's will. Her smile faltered. "Please wait here." 10 minutes later, I was led into a private office, where a man named Collins sat beneath a painting of St. Thomas, the Doubter. Fitting. "I won't pretend this is routine, Mr. Harrow," he said. Jamie was different. "How so?" "Brilliant, quiet, rarely spoke in class. But sometimes he'd slip, call himself another name, talk about dreams he couldn't wake from. Once, during an essay exam, he turned in a handwritten letter addressed to someone named Eleanor. We never gave it back. He reached into a locked drawer and slid it across the desk. The letter was crumpled, water-stained. I unfolded it carefully. "I know you're not my mother. You never were, but you were the only one who stayed. That counts for something, doesn't it? Tell him I don't want the money. I just want the truth, before it takes me too." I folded the letter slowly. My throat was dry. "Where is he now?" I asked. Collins looked out the window. "He left 3 days ago, told the dean he was taking a holiday, but no one's heard from him since." I left the school with a name, a letter, and a trail already fading beneath the snow. The apartment came next. Small, second floor, above a bookstore that smelled of old pages and wet stone. The landlady said Jamie paid in cash, never brought guests, left incense burning and lights on all night. "That boy was scared of his own dreams," she muttered, handing me the key. Inside, the place felt paused, not abandoned, not lived in, frozen, like he'd stepped out for coffee and never came back. There was tea cooling on the windowsill, a coat slung across the back of a chair, a leather notebook open on the desk with one line scratched across the page. "I think someone else is living in my skin." The bed was neatly made. The sink was dry, but the closet held something else, a duffel bag. Inside, clothes, a roll of bills, a burner phone, and a sealed envelope marked, "In case I forget again." I opened it carefully. The handwriting was shaking, unsure, pieces of a boy cracking under pressure. "My name is Jamie Whitestone. I think. Sometimes I wake up and my hands feel wrong. Sometimes I say things in languages I never learned. There's a woman who watches me sleep. She says she's my mother, but she never calls me Jamie." My stomach turned. I checked the burner phone. One message, unread, no timestamp. "You're close, but not close enough. He's almost ready to remember everything." No sender. I looked out the window across the street. A black car was parked beneath the ash tree, engine off, no lights. I stepped closer. The driver's window slid down, just an inch. Enough for me to see her face, not clearly, but the silhouette was enough. Angular, hollow-eyed, pale. She watched me for 3 seconds. Then the car pulled away, smooth and silent. I didn't follow. Not yet. Because I was starting to understand, Jamie wasn't just a missing person. He was a puzzle piece in someone else's story. And someone, maybe Eleanor, maybe not, was trying to write him into the past before he remembered how to live in the present. Chapter 2. The School That Was Paid to Stay Quiet. The next morning, I returned to St. Bellamy's before the sun had fully risen, before the whispers could reorganize themselves into silence. There was something about that school, the way it carried its secrets. It was too polished, too polite. A place that didn't just protect reputation, it curated it. And Jamie had lived here for 3 years, invisible. The receptionist wasn't in yet. The halls were empty. I didn't knock when I entered the records office. I picked the lock. Old habits. Inside, the air smelled of ink and fresh polish. I found Jamie's file again, the one I wasn't supposed to see the day before. But this time, I went deeper, past the surface data, past the course grades and counselor memos. Tucked at the bottom of the file was a folder labeled simply, Special Handling, Directive from M. Vale, Marcus Vale. The same man who had once handled Arthur Whitmore's foreign trusts. The same man who had vanished after Eleanor reappeared. Inside the folder were memos between school administrators and Vale's office. They were filled with legal language, but the intent was clear. Jamie's identity was to remain confidential. Faculty were instructed to withhold all documentation from public systems. Counselors were prohibited from discussing his psychological assessments outside approved channels. One note, handwritten in the margin, stopped me cold. Student may have inherited cognitive instability from maternal line. Monitor for signs of identity splitting. Identity splitting, so they knew. They'd seen it. The slipping, the dreams, the way he called himself Arthur, some days, Jameson on others. And they buried it, sealed it, for a price. This wasn't just a school, it was a vault. I scanned the room and saw a locked drawer marked Counselor Reports, Archive. With some effort and a thin metal strip, it clicked open. Inside were recordings, old digital therapy logs, numbered but unlabeled. One was flagged, Session number 19, withheld by request of legal counsel. I transferred it to my phone and left the school before the first bell rang. I listened in the car, parked just outside the gates, engine off. The audio crackled softly before the voice came through. A boy, quiet, hesitant, but deliberate. Sometimes I think I was born twice, once as me, and once as someone they made up. The counselor's voice, calm, guiding. And who is the one they made up? Jamie, that's what they call him, but I don't think it's mine. I remember another name. I see it carved on a tree in a place I've never been. I think my real name is Arthur. My skin went cold. And this name, Arthur, does he feel like someone else or part of you? He feels like the part that remembers, the part that knows why the woman keeps watching me in the mirror. There was a long pause on the recording, then a question I didn't expect. What does she want, Jamie? She says I was never supposed to know. The tape ended there. I stared at the dashboard, the silence screaming between my ears. Arthur, Eleanor, the woman in the car. Someone had stitched a new identity over Jamie like wallpaper, layered it until he couldn't tell which walls were real anymore. And worse, Someone had paid an entire school to keep him in that room. Chapter 3. A hidden room in the Whitmore estate. The Whitmore estate had never felt so quiet. The snow in the courtyard had turned to a crust of ice, and the windows, once glowing with arrogant warmth, now stared back at me like blind eyes. Cold. Watchful. I returned not because I wanted to, but because everything, every twisted piece of this puzzle, kept pulling me back to this place, to the house where lies were born, raised, and buried in silk-lined coffins. I wasn't looking for Jamie this time. I was looking for whoever had created him. The caretaker met me at the gate with a weary nod. "I left the east wing open," he said, "just like you asked, but I wouldn't linger too long." I didn't answer. I already knew which room I was going to. Arthur's east wing had always been sealed, off limits, unused since his wife passed. But a passing remark from the groundskeeper weeks ago had stuck in my mind. That wing used to be a nursery. It made sense now. If Jamie had ever been brought here as a child, if Eleanor, or someone else, had once visited in secret, this was where it would have happened. Inside, the east corridor smelled like varnished wood and thyme. The wallpaper was peeling in slow, elegant curls. Most doors were locked, but one, halfway down the hall, stood slightly ajar. I pushed it open with the back of my hand. Dust danced in the shaft of pale afternoon light that cut across the room. A child's room once, but not anymore. The crib was long gone. In its place stood a writing desk, a padded chair, and rows of carefully stacked boxes labeled with single initials. M. The air shifted. This was no nursery. It had become a vault. I opened the first box. Letters. Dozens. All handwritten. All addressed to one name. Jamie. But not once signed Eleanor. Only M. The handwriting was feminine, elegant, controlled, but never affectionate. These weren't motherly letters. They were instructions, narratives, and subtle corrections. You were born on a warm spring night. You never cried. You've always loved snow. You used to say it made you feel safe. Your mother was sick, but she loved you more than words could say. But page after page, things didn't align. Some letters claimed Jamie loved astronomy. Others said he was terrified of stars. One note said he had a dog as a child named Toby. Another said he hated animals. It wasn't affection. It was construction. Whoever M was, she wasn't raising Jamie. She was reprogramming him, layer by layer. I opened a second box. This one marked confidential. Return to Monsieur Vale. Inside was a black envelope sealed with gold wax. I broke the seal. Inside was a single document, a legal form, unsigned, a transfer of guardianship, Jamie's name printed at the top. The guardian listed? Marie Vale. Marcus's sister. Not Eleanor, not blood, but the pen in every letter, the hand guiding the fiction. I sat back in the chair, heart pounding. If Eleanor was the storm, Marie was the architect. And Arthur had let it happen, funded it, covered it, maybe even suggested it. But why? What was so dangerous about Jamie knowing the truth? I reached for another folder, but stopped cold when I noticed the corner of a photograph, half tucked beneath the desk blotter. I pulled it free. 3 people, standing together in front of a hospital, faces blurred by time and exposure, but the names on their coats were barely visible. Dr. Marcus Vale, Eleanor Whitmore, Marie Vale, and, in Eleanor's arms, a newborn wrapped in white. The back of the photo was dated 17 years ago, scrawled beneath it, one line, "Promise me you'll make him forget." Chapter 4. The man named Marcus. His name had circled the case like smoke for weeks, always in the margins, never at the center. But now the smoke was thick enough to follow. Marcus Vale, former private attorney to Arthur Whitmore, estate handler, architect of multiple offshore trusts, and, as of 11 months ago, a missing person with 2 international warrants and no forwarding address. The man who signed Jamie's life into obscurity. I started with the shell companies, places Marcus used to funnel Arthur's assets. Most had gone cold. But one, Solheim Partners, Geneva, showed signs of recent activity. A withdrawal, quiet, disguised, but traceable. The funds had been routed through a third-party account, registered to a rural property just outside Bordeaux, France. That's where I found him. The house was crumbling, vines curling like veins around the window frames, a place forgotten by the world and perfectly chosen by someone who wanted it that way. I knocked once, silence, then footsteps, slow, measured. The door creaked open just far enough for one eye to study me. "You're late," he said. His voice was older than I expected, worn, not afraid, just tired. "I wasn't invited," I replied. He opened the door wider. Marcus Vale looked nothing like the files. Gone was the crisp suit, the coiffed hair. What stood before me was a man hollowed by years of hiding, unshaven, gaunt, eyes that had seen too much and wished they hadn't. We sat in a study that smelled of ink, firewood, and red wine left open too long. "Jamie," I said. Just the name. He flinched, so I pressed. "You wrote the trust. You signed the guardianship papers. You erased him from every system that could protect him. Why?" He leaned back, poured himself a drink. His hands trembled as he lifted the glass. "I did what I was told," he said flatly. "By Arthur, by Eleanor, by Marie, all of them." "Marie," I said. "She's your sister." He nodded slowly. "And the only person I've ever feared." I waited. He took a sip. His voice cracked now, not with fear, but memory. "She was obsessed. Said the boy was chosen. Said the Whitmore name would ruin him unless we rewrote the story. And Eleanor? She gave up. That stopped me." "What do you mean?" "She handed him over. Not forever. Just long enough to buy time. To disappear. She thought she could come back. That she could save him." "And Arthur?" "He funded the entire operation. Paid for the school. Paid to keep Eleanor out of the news. Paid for the silence." He stared into the fire. "But he never forgave himself. That's why he called her name when he died." I didn't know whether to believe him. "Where's Jamie now?" His lips tightened. "I don't know." I stood. Wrong answer. He didn't flinch. Just looked at me. Really looked. And said, "Even if I told you, it wouldn't help. Because Jamie's already forgetting who you are." My blood turned cold. "What does that mean?" Marcus set his glass down, slow and deliberate. "It means the next time you find him, you might not recognize him. And worse, he won't recognize himself." Before I left, he handed me something. A flash drive. "No passwords," he said. "No games, just truth." Inside the car, I plugged it into my laptop. Dozens of audio files, video diaries, voice memos, a digital archive of Jamie's descent into memory collapse, carefully documented, logged, filed, by Marcus, by Marie, even by Eleanor. In one of the final clips, Jamie stares into the camera, eyes vacant. "If you're watching this, and you know who I am, then tell me, was I ever real?" Chapter 5. Jamie's apartment. Frozen in time. I knew before I opened the door. The lock had been changed. Not a crude job, no scratches, no sign of forced entry. Just clean brass, smooth keyway, professional, quiet. Like someone who'd lived here before. Or someone who'd always had the right to return. I tried the key the landlady gave me anyway. It turned halfway, then stopped cold. The silence in the hallway thickened around me. 3rd floor, east side. One window facing the ash tree. This was Jamie's place. I'd walked its rooms, sat at his desk, read his handwriting on letters he wasn't sure he wrote. And now, the door was different. So was the air behind it. I knocked. Once. No answer. I waited. The hall creaked once beneath me. Pipes hissed behind the wall like something breathing through metal lungs. Then, a sound. Not a footstep. Not a voice. Something smaller, like a cup nudged across a table. I knocked again, harder. Still no answer. "Jamie," I called, soft but firm. "It's Kevin Harrow. I'm not here to hurt you." Silence. Then, I heard it. A whisper, muffled, but clear enough to chill me. "I told you not to come back." The voice wasn't Jamie's. It was deeper, older. I took a step back. The peephole darkened. Someone was watching from the other side. I reached for my phone, dialed the landlady's number. No signal, of course. 3rd floor, stone walls, old wiring. Nothing worked when you needed it. I knocked once more. "I need to talk to Jamie," I said. "That's all." Silence. Then a click. Software. Mechanical. The sound of a bolt sliding back. The door cracked open just an inch, and through it, his eye. Jamie's eye. Bloodshot. Sleepless. Watching me like I might explode. "Do you remember me?" I asked. He didn't answer, just looked. Then the door opened the rest of the way. He hadn't changed much physically. Still the same boyish frame, the same tired slouch, but his posture was different. Rigid, alert, like a house cat that's seen too many dead birds. "Can I come in?" I asked. Jamie stared for another second, then nodded, slow. I stepped inside and stopped. It was clean. Too clean. The tea mug was gone. The incense burner was polished. The cluttered bookshelves had been stripped bare, replaced with a single book on the desk. Rewriting the Self by Dr. Harold Fraser. I glanced at the wall. A mirror had been hung there since I last visited. A large one, directly across from the bed. The curtains were drawn. The lamps were dim. The apartment smelled like bleach. Jamie sat on the edge of the bed and looked at his hands like they didn't belong to him. "Do you remember what happened last time I came?" I asked. He didn't look up. "I left," he whispered. "And where did you go?" His eyes twitched. "Somewhere colder." I took a breath. "Jamie, I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly." "Nothing." "Who's Marie?" He flinched. "Is she your mother?" Silence. "Is Eleanor?" His jaw clenched. Then, very softly, without looking at me, "I think I had 3 mothers, but none of them wanted me to be me." I sat down in the chair across from him. "Then who are you now?" He finally looked at me. His eyes were wet, and when he answered, it wasn't his voice. "I don't know, but I think I'm not supposed to find out." Chapter 6. The Mirror Test. There's something primal about mirrors. We trust them until we don't. Jamie sat motionless on the edge of the bed. His eyes had that hollow glassiness that children get after fevered dreams, like he wasn't fully in the room anymore. Like part of him was still buried somewhere in a different hour, a different name. I followed his gaze to the mirror. It was large, heavy-framed, hung with surgical precision across from the bed. The glass was clean, too clean. No dust, no fingerprints. It gleamed like water waiting to drown. "Did you put that up?" I asked. Jamie shook his head. It was already here, after I came back. Came back from where? He didn't answer. The silence stretched between us. My eyes drifted back to the mirror. We were both visible in it. Him on the bed, me in the chair. But something wasn't right. The light was wrong. The shadows were wrong. Or maybe it was the stillness, the kind that doesn't belong in reflections. Then Jamie stood, slow, careful, and stepped toward the mirror. I want to show you something, he said. His voice was quiet, but steady. He stopped in front of the glass just inches away and raised a hand. The reflection didn't move, not immediately. There was a pause, a hesitation, as if it had to decide whether to follow. Then the mirrored version of Jamie lifted its hand, but not to match his, to press its palm flat against the glass. Jamie didn't move. Neither did I. His real hand hovered in the air. The reflected one touched the mirror and left behind a faint smear. "Did you see that?" Jamie whispered. I nodded once. He lowered his hand. The reflection held its for one more beat, then dropped it too. "Sometimes," Jamie said, eyes locked on the glass, "it talks when I don't." My skin prickled. "And what does it say?" He turned to look at me, slow, deliberate. "It calls me Arthur." I swallowed hard. "Do you know who Arthur is?" He nodded. "My name, before the story." I stood up, walked to the mirror, looked into it. My reflection stared back. Normal. Still. But Jamie's had begun to tilt its head even though the real Jamie stood perfectly still. "Who hung this mirror here?" I asked. "I think she did." "Marie?" Jamie shook his head. "No," he said. "The other one. The one who wants to watch." I looked back at the glass, and in the far edge of the frame, just beyond the angle of natural reflection, there was a second silhouette. Thin, female, barely visible, watching, not moving. Jamie took a step back. "I don't think it's a mirror anymore," he whispered. "I think it's a door." And the thing on the other side was waiting for someone to open it. Chapter 7. The Black Car in the Snow. I didn't sleep that night. Neither did Jamie. He sat in the chair by the mirror, motionless, as if afraid that if he blinked, it would move again. I kept the lights on, kept the curtains shut, kept my coat on. By dawn, I knew it was time to move him. We couldn't stay here, not with that mirror, not with whatever had followed him back. But when I stepped outside, she was already waiting. The black car, parked just beyond the sidewalk, half buried in fresh snow. Same model, same faded license plate. And again, no sound, no movement, as if the vehicle had grown there overnight. "Stay inside," I told Jamie, my hand already brushing the weight of my revolver under the coat. He nodded. I crossed the street, slow, measured, no sudden moves. As I approached, I saw her through the frost-streaked glass. She was seated in the back, still, eyes forward. Her face was thin, angular, too still, like a porcelain mask. Pale skin, black coat buttoned to the collar. No expression, just presence. The kind that made your spine remember childhood fears. I tapped the glass once. She didn't flinch. Then she opened the door. I didn't ask who she was. I already knew. Marie Vale. She slid aside, wordless, gesturing for me to sit. I stepped in. The door closed behind me with the sound of a secret being sealed. The interior of the car was warm, too warm. The air smelled like cloves and leather, like the kind of silence that had teeth. "Detective Harrow," she said at last. Her voice was exactly as I imagined. Velvet stretched over wire. "I wasn't sure you'd get this far." "You made it hard," I replied. "I had to." She looked out the windshield. The snow hadn't stopped falling. "Jamie doesn't know yet, does he?" she said softly. "He knows enough." She shook her head once. "Knowing is dangerous. For him, for you." "What did you do to him?" She smiled, a small, mournful smile. "I gave him peace. I gave him a blank slate. He was never meant to carry the weight of that family, of what Eleanor did, of what Arthur allowed. He's not a slate. He's a person." She looked at me then. Really looked. And for the first time, I saw something beneath the surface. Not madness, not cruelty, fear. "Do you know what happens when someone remembers too much, too fast?" she whispered. "They shatter. Memory is not just recollection. It's identity. It's gravity." I didn't answer. She leaned closer. "I'm not trying to control him, Mr. Harrow. I'm trying to protect him. From what he is, from who he was, from the things he saw when he was too young to understand. He's not a child anymore. No," she said. "He's something else now." A pause. Heavy. Frozen in the space between breath and truth. Then she handed me a file. Thin. No label. "I suggest you read this," she said. "What is it?" "Everything Jamie saw before the story began." And then she opened the door and stepped out, boots crunching the snow like a blade dragging through silk. She didn't look back, just walked into the snowfall until the white swallowed her whole. I sat there for a long time, holding the file like it might burn. When I opened it, there was a photograph on top. A child, no more than 6, standing barefoot in the snow outside the Whitmore estate. His mouth was open mid-scream, and behind him, blurred, distant, but unmistakable, Eleanor Whitmore holding something wrapped in black cloth. Something dripping. The file slid from my fingers. I had come here searching for the boy. But what I had found was the reason everyone tried to erase him. Chapter 8. Eleanor's not the only one. The file Marie gave me sat on the passenger seat like it were breathing. I didn't open it again until I got back to the inn. Not in the car, not in the cold. I needed walls, a door, and time, because some truths deserve a roof overhead before they're spoken aloud. I locked the door behind me, pulled the curtains tight. Then I laid the folder flat on the table, flipped back the cover, and began to read. There were no case numbers, no legal headers, no stamps or signatures, just handwritten notes, scanned, raw, frantic. The first was dated 17 years ago. Whitmore Heir declared stillborn by private physician. Second child removed from official birth records at request of Arthur Whitmore. I froze. Stillborn? Jamie wasn't listed as a Whitmore heir, because someone had already taken that place. But what did second child mean? I kept reading. Another note. Marie Vale listed as guardian under emergency medical pretense. Subject transported to Monastère de l'Enfant Voilé. My pulse spiked. That wasn't a hospital. It was a cloister, a monastery hospital in the Swiss Alps. I pulled up the name on my phone. No website, no contact info, only one result. A death certificate issued to a child listed as unclaimed male, 2008. The photo from earlier, the one with Eleanor holding something in black, burned in my mind. What was she carrying? The next page was a psychological evaluation, Jamie's. Patient presence with alternating identity disassociation. Memories attributed to events occurring prior to recorded age. Frequent claims of watching himself from the outside. A second name appeared on the margin, Jameson Whitmore, unconfirmed. And then, the final document, a letter. Not from Marie, from Eleanor. I gave him away before I gave him a name. I thought I was saving him. But he was never mine, was he? They called him Jamie. But there were 2 boys that winter. One lived. The other never stopped watching. I stared at the page so long it blurred. 2 boys. One registered. One buried. Which one was Jamie? Or worse, was he both? A memory surfaced. Jamie staring into the mirror, whispering, "Sometimes I think I was born twice." He wasn't speaking in metaphor. He was remembering. A split, a severing, a life overwritten by another that refused to stay buried. I pulled my coat on and left the room. I drove through the snow, past the empty bookstore, past the church, back to the apartment building. But I didn't go inside, because as I pulled up to the curb, I saw him, Jamie, standing at the window, still, pale, his eyes wide. But it wasn't fear. It was recognition of something behind me. I turned slowly and saw her, Eleanor, standing in the snow, hair wet, eyes sunken, wrapped in black. She said nothing, just looked at me, and then up at the window, where Jamie was gone. When I turned back, she was gone too. The only thing left where she stood was a footprint, facing the window, and beside it, a child's footprint, bare, small, and facing me.